Welcome back to the Playbig podcast, where we're having conversations with people that are playing big in life, in business, and in money. And today I have a very distinct honor of sitting down with Ray Higdon. Ray, it's an honor to have you into our studio here in Alpharetta, Georgia.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So we'll start off with, who is Ray Higdon?
Well, I'm originally from Indiana, and I currently live in Naples, Florida, and been involved in the network marketing space now for 14 years. Before I was a coach or trainer, I was the number one earner of a company. And a year ago, what really defines Ray now is a year ago I came to Christ.
That's
and
awesome.
I've mixed that into like a marketplace ministry. So I teach network marketers faith-based mindset and leadership principles that work.
That's awesome. So what originally moved, how old were you when you moved from Indiana down to Naples, Florida? Or did you bounce around in between there?
Yeah, I think I was like 12 or something. You know, my parents split when I was very young. And in my dad's house, it was a very abusive home. And so at the age of 12, I had the opportunity to leave, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I went to Florida.
And have you been in different places in Florida, or always Naples, Florida?
I went to high school in Cape Coral, Florida, which is right in that area,
Mm-hmm.
Southwest Florida. So I've lived in Cape Coral, Estero, Fort Myers, and Naples.
Awesome. And network marketing industry, for people that don't know network marketing or what network marketing is, a lot of people have heard of it, but
Sure.
what is network marketing to you in your experience?
So to me, because I've done a lot of different businesses. You know, I had an advertising franchise, did real estate investing, had a title company. To me, network marketing is the lowest risk, lowest overhead way for the average ordinary person to start a business. And so a lot of people that never would have started a traditional business can be a business owner by starting in network marketing. And they, compensate you based on who you introduce to the company or the product or service. And, it was good to me.
Right.
After I lost it all in real estate, I was devastated and just knocked out, $1 million in debt, divorced, depressed. And I got serious about a network marketing company and bounced back. And that's when I became the number one earner of that company.
Wow. I mean, that
was a lot.
That's quite a journey. What came first? The advertising? You got into advertising. You owned an advertising franchise. What got you into advertising? What were you doing that you said, advertising is where I'm going to go to? Where were you doing before that?
Yeah. So April of 2004, I read my first book on anything entrepreneur-like. And so I read that first book. A year later, I left. That was the last job I ever had. So, 18 years ago. And I jumped into real estate. So me and a partner were buying rental properties in mainly Fort Myers, Florida. And so we amassed, 37 rental units, single family, triplexes, duplexes, things like that. And just everywhere we went, we would run into incompetence. And so, 37 units, I'd gone through 9 mortgage brokers. So I'm like, man, these guys are terrible. So I got my mortgage license, did mortgages for a while. I was doing a lot of advertising. And one of the places that I did advertising was with this advertising franchise. And so me and my partner ended up buying that franchise, which, it didn't work out because we bought it right before the market crash. And so, that was, $40,000 kissed goodbye. But yeah, it's been a wild ride for sure.
When you got into real estate, because I think a lot of people get attracted to real estate,
Sure.
or they see people having success stories of real estate, or it's always one of those asset classes that people are like, if I could figure out how to do that. What did you learn about real estate? The good points and bad points of real estate starting out, and then what you learned later, and more importantly, what did you learn about yourself during the good times and bad times of just the real estate portion?
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of money in real estate, and if done right, you can do really well. And I think the lesson looking back is we had gotten some great deals according to the cash flow. When the market crashed and construction jobs went away, things that were renting for $800, $850 a month, all of a sudden you couldn't rent them for $450, $500.
Wow.
And so now you multiply that out and you're losing money.
Yeah.
And, but if I look back, if we didn't become so alarmed at that, and we were able to, maybe shift gears and make money in other things and actually hold on to them, it would have been very, very worth it. And so I think, holding on to, I think doing something in real estate just makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Whether you're, part of like a syndicate deals. I have, I deal in, now I'm back to being in some parts of real estate, like multifamily units and raising capital and things like that. But there's always going to be a need for real estate. That's a fact. There's a lot of money in real estate. And if you can, manage it, like a business and not be emotional about it, then, you can do really good.
When going from reading a book about being an entrepreneur, choosing real estate, but then, seeing a problem with a mortgage business, being entrepreneurial minded,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I can go solve that problem too. Then advertise it, I can go solve that problem too. Going from reading a book about entrepreneurship to going full bore into it in that particular market, what did you learn about entrepreneurship that you're like, oh, I like this, or this isn't all it's cracked up to be, or what was that process like for you?
Well, I mean, I was at the time, I was working at an insurance company in the IT department and, making decent money. I mean, I didn't finish high school on time, never finished college. So, 80 grand a year was, pretty good.
Right.
And, but I you couldn't, there was no, hey, do this to make an unlimited amount, like
Right.
there was no freedom. And that's something I talk a lot about in our book, but there was no freedom there. And I realized that I no longer liked what I did. And I had a lesson that I learned when I was like 18 or 19 that I had vowed that if I'm ever in something I don't like and don't want to do, I'm getting out of it no matter what. And I'll tell you the story. So I was working, I had, throughout high school, I hung out with a pretty rough crowd and sold drugs, did drugs, and when I decided to get away from that, I just basically just became a workaholic, and I was just took a bunch of jobs, and one of them was working at Winn-Dixie, the grocery, it's a grocery store, and I was working the graveyard shift, right? And I remember this guy was there, and he was the manager, and he was at the time, I think it was like 32, maybe something like that, and I'm hungry. I'm looking for advice. And so I go to him and I said, hey man, you've been here a while. He goes, yeah, 12 years. I'm like, oh man, you must love it. He goes, oh, I hate it. I'm like, and I'm 18 maybe. And that was strange. Like he's been here 12 years, but he hates it. And he goes, but at this point, I probably can't leave and make the same amount. So I'm just going to stick it out.
Wow.
And I'm like, that will never be me. And so that just sunk in. Anytime I've ever been in a career and I started to do it just for the money or I didn't like it anymore, I'm like, I got to get out of this thing. And so what's interesting is probably about maybe 6 years ago, the local newspaper highlighted my wife and I. And that's when my mom actually believed that I'd finally made it. Like I'd been on all kinds of
Now
stages
you've been
all over the
validated.
world.
It's in the fine print.
Yes. Now it's legit.
Right.
Not just me talking.
Yes, right.
And so this guy reaches out to me after seeing the newspaper article, and he says, hey, man, I don't know if you remember me or not, but I was your manager at Winn-Dixie.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember you.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah,
and I'm kind of self-conscious.
shifted my life.
Has he heard me talk about him? Because
Right.
I have.
Yeah.
I've like named him because I didn't think I'd ever see him again. And I said, so how are things going? He goes, I'm at Winn-Dixie, and it sucks just as much. And I'm like, dang.
Wow.
Like this is we're talking 30 years
Yeah.
he had been there,
That's
and
crazy.
and that's how a lot of people live. And there's actually a proverb that says, "The hand of the diligent shall rule, while the lazy are put to forced labor."
Wow.
And here he is. He doesn't think he can do any better. He's
Right.
actually in forced labor,
Right.
And it's just an intellectual laziness, and it's a laziness of faith. Because if you're afraid that you can't do better, it means you don't have faith in God.
Right.
You don't have faith that there's something that could possibly be better.
Right. That commitment that you made to yourself at 18, 19 years old, how have you kept yourself true to that commitment? Because oftentimes you would know there's people make a commitment to themselves that
Sure.
I'm going to do this. But I'm interested in you personally. When you make a commitment to yourself, what is it about you, or what is it that you were honoring about yourself that when Ray says I'm going to do something, I stay committed to it. I mean, at a young age. I mean, 18 is pretty early to make a life altering decision and stay true and committed to that. Where does that come from for you back then? That may be different now, but how did you honor yourself that long?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I wasn't my whole life. There's been some interesting things that are just wired in me, and just a relentlessness of I'm either all in or I'm not interested at all, and
Right.
like I've just always been that way. And like with real estate, I read that book in April 2004. By June, I had duplexes, and I don't know what
Wow.
I'm doing. It
Right.
makes no sense. And that commitment of as soon as I know this is not what I'm supposed to be doing, or I don't like this or whatever, I have stayed true to that. I'll give you an example. So I was when the real estate market crashed, and like none of my real estate deals are working anymore. I went on the road. I had a speaking company that asked me, they're like, hey man, you're good at speaking. You should go on the road. And so I'm on the road 22 days a month.
Wow.
Vegas, Chicago, Phoenix, Miami, LA. And I'm selling a $7,000 system in a 90-minute pitch to a cold audience.
Wow.
So they don't know who I am.
Right.
I'm not branded or anything, but I got 90 minutes to sell them this $7,000 thing. And anytime I sold it, I would give out my business card because unlike a lot of the other speakers for that company, I was a real estate investor. Like I actually did this stuff.
Did it,
I didn't just
talk about it.
talk about it. And so I'd give my card out, and I'd been hearing that people who had bought weren't getting support, and like the company had grown very quickly, and these people that had trusted me to buy weren't getting support. And so I remember being in Phoenix, and I'm talking to this lady, and she's got to be, she's like 75 or something. And I got this in the back of my head of, people are buying, not getting support. And I remember thinking, I hope she doesn't buy.
Wow.
And then I'm like, what am I doing? And some of these deals, my real estate has totally crashed, but some of these 90-minute, speeches, I'd make 30 grand, right?
Yeah.
And that was my last one because I'm like, I'm not supposed to be doing this. And so I go back home to depression and foreclosure and divorce and lost everything. But I just couldn't do that thing. It was paying me, well, but I just couldn't do it anymore.
Wow.
And so looking back, I now realize that God just wired me in a very particular way. And, he's made everything, like I've never naturally been good at literally anything.
Really?
Never.
Wow.
Everything has, like I sucked at speaking. I sucked at sales. I've just sucked at everything I've ever started, but it made me a good teacher because he created this relentlessness in me of I'm going to figure this thing out, which makes me a good teacher because I can take someone, I don't assume that they're good at anything. I can take someone and make them world-class because I can, teach them what they need and, what to watch out for.
Was it in that process that you learned that about yourself of being a good teacher? I mean, it's one thing to be able to do it yourself, of having this relentlessness, like being wired a certain way, God giving you a certain gift.
Yeah.
You recognizing that gift, or you just don't know any different, that this is just, it's either this or that. It's very simple. Most people sit in the middle of not doing anything, of hesitation.
Yeah.
When did you learn that being a teacher was also something God had put inside of you?
I think it was just making observations of others. And, I remember one time in particular, I was at this network marketing conference, and this very talented speaker, he's like such a good speaker. And he gets up on the stage and he says, I recruited the first 60 people I talked to, and this is what I said. And like everyone's like, oh, people are freaking out, like the magic script. And he didn't realize that it wasn't his magic script. It's that he was highly respected. So he just took a room that probably 80% of them are not highly respected, and gave them a script that's literally going to have them quit the industry because they're like, oh, it worked for him. It must be the script. So they go use the script. They're not going to get 60 yeses. Right.
Yes.
And so I think just observing other people and seeing, oh, they're teaching in a way that not everyone's going to be able to do that.
Right.
And this is very indicative in today's standards, because as soon as someone becomes an influencer, all of a sudden they're interviewed, they're teaching, they're on stage, and they are genuinely sharing what they did.
Right.
But a lot of them, they don't recognize that natural talent, what they were gifted with, versus the masses who may not be gifted that way.
Right.
And so if you assume not gifted,
Right.
then you can teach them, and the gifted can pick up from that too.
Correct.
So I think it was just observations of other teachers and seeing what I viewed as not that I said this, but I saw it as, oh, that's a flawed way of teaching.
Where did that compassion for other people come from? Because that's basically it's almost a compassionate view of a human
Well
being.
said. Yeah.
Where did that come from for you? Like that bothered you enough to want to teach or educate in a different way that went to the average person who doesn't have any skills, is probably afraid of selling or marketing or doing anything or taking a step towards themselves. Where did the compassion come from?
Yeah, good insight. I mean, I think that comes from my childhood of, people. People around me knew that I was being abused, and no one did anything about it. So I grew up with this "I'm not important" kind of stigma. I'm not important. I always felt like I had to prove myself, and so I'll show you, and like I just grew up with these certain wounds that made me just voracious, want to fight for the underdog. And part of that has probably harmed me in a way, in that before I could recognize my strongholds and patterns, it may have had me, not be as good at networking with higher end individuals. Right? There was a time where I don't know. I just felt like I didn't belong with higher end individuals, but I belonged with the masses to help them, and that's not healthy either. You need you need to be able to feel like you're in the room because God put you in the room, and help whoever you're in front of.
Right.
And I was just reading this. It's 1 Corinthians 9, and it talks. Paul says, when I'm in front of the weak, I am weak, because I'm able to help all people, right? So he adapts. He, in Acts, you even see him change his story as he speaks to the, Roman council versus a different Jewish council.
Right.
And so it's you need to be able to adapt to lift people up wherever they are, right? And so from being in the upper ends of success, I know that what I was chasing was the wrong thing. And it's okay to have money, have success, have significance, et cetera, but that's not fixing the issues that you're probably chasing that stuff for. And so, now, since coming to Christ, I just, that's, a big thing for me, is to talk to more people about that.
Right. What do you feel like people are chasing? I'd say the average person or people in the world. They're chasing the wrong thing. What is it that they think that they're chasing versus what they're really chasing, or their spirit is probably really seeking for?
Yeah. So whatever you needed most as a kid but didn't get are your sacred wounds. And you will try to fulfill those wounds in as many ways as you can, right? So because, what did I need most as a kid but didn't get? Safety, friendship, love, attention, you name it. There's a lot.
Right.
And so what we do is we try to find acceptance from Instagram fame or net worth or achievement or stages or whatever. We try to fill these holes through these other things. And I remember seeing a 60-minute interview with an NFL player, and this at the time, this person had just won their third Super Bowl, and the interviewer says, "Man, you got to feel amazing right now. I mean, 3 Super Bowls, that's incredible." And he said, "Most days I just think there's got to be something else."
Wow.
And the interviewer says, "Well, what would that be?" And he said, "I wish I knew." and that was Tom Brady. Now, he since went on to win
Right.
more Super Bowls. But I think that, Tony Robbins says success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And we chase these things, and I was chasing, right? And I think it's different for every person. And I think what you're chasing is different. But for me, I thought, if I have $1 million year, then that's when I'm going to feel better about
Right.
myself. Did it, $1 million month, $1 million day. I've built an Inc. 5000 company. None of those things made me feel any different about myself. And so at some point you're like, maybe it's something else.
Yeah.
And so I think, a lot of people, they're trying to fill those sacred wounds that they had. They're trying to prove their father wrong, or they're trying to get that attention that they should have had as a kid, but didn't.
Right.
And the better thing, to realize is that whatever you've been through, it equipped you to help the person you used to be. So I wouldn't trade my child abuse for anything.
Wow.
It's one of the greatest gifts that that God put me through, because it put me in rooms I otherwise couldn't be in. Like, I go and speak at kids in foster care. I go and speak to troubled teenagers. And I remember this was about 2 years ago. I was walking up to speak to this group of troubled teenagers, and they see me come and they're like, who's this white boy? And but about 2 stories in, they're like, okay, all right,
This guy knows.
and I wouldn't trade that for the world,
Wow.
man. Like it, to be able to, because people really resonate when they know that you get them. And I love the fact that I get people that have been abused. I
Right.
get people who have been through trauma.
Right.
And I wouldn't trade that.
Wow. Before you start realizing that, real estate, advertising, mortgages, you said you were $1 million in debt, or there's a serious rough patch in your life. I mean, you already had a bad childhood, went
Yep.
out, started doing something, raising yourself up, and then falling back down. What was, take me to that moment of time. What was that like for you? And also, what is that doing to your self-worth? Because you already were, I'm not good enough. You already had these wounds that were here at the beginning. You went and proved some people wrong. You went and did something, and then it unravels. What happens to your self-worth at that time, and what is going on emotionally for you, or in your own psychology at one of the low points in your time? Because I think a lot of people only see successful people. They see, oh, this is easy. But when you hear the backstory, God is always doing something, around you and through you. But take me to that moment in time, because this is even pre you coming to Jesus at this moment in time. What was that like for you?
Yeah. So, when I went full time as an entrepreneur in 2005, like, everyone was like, what are you doing? Like, that's crazy. You have a good job.
Right.
What are you going to do for benefits? Like, that was, the big question. Right. And, hey, for like, 2.5 years, I'm rocking it. Those suckers were wrong, because I was very, full of myself. I was very arrogant. I was, just a jerk.
Prideful, yeah.
And, but like, 3.5 years in, I'm broke, and I felt like a friggin' loser, man. Like, I remember looking I hated, there were 2 periods of my life where I hated looking in the mirror.
Wow.
I just hated, I would avoid them. I would just like, I didn't even want to look up. And just try to drown my sorrows. Just drank a lot. I would get blackout drunk, like right during the week, I was, I had a couple credit cards left that hadn't figured things out yet. And
the slow pokes.
yeah. And yeah, man, it was tough, man. I was depressed big time. But there was something that switched, and that has to do with forgiveness. So I'm in this low point, and of course, when I'm public, hey,
Right.
how you doing?
Game
Oh, you
face.
wouldn't
Game
believe
face.
me. You wouldn't believe me if I told you.
Yeah, that's right. How's everything?
Right.
Unbelievable. Unbelievably good or unbelievably bad.
Yeah,
Either
yeah.
way, you won't believe it.
And so I'm in this low place, and someone I don't know, and this is just looking back again, how God moves.
Yeah.
So someone I don't know buys me a ticket to this 3-day event, and it's called the Landmark Forum. I'm sure some people have heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go there. I'm like, all right, hopefully this will help me make some money, because
Right.
that's my number one need. And I go there, and I realize that repair relationship with dad is on a to-do list with no priority. And things that have a to-do list with no priority, you lose the chance.
About how old are you at this point?
So I'm not good with that, but that was 2009.
Okay.
So I'm 45 now, so whatever that equates to.
Okay. 14 years ago?
29?
10 years?
Something like
14? Yeah, ish.
Okay. So 31.
Yeah.
And so on day 2, and I hadn't talked to him in 13 years, and I had every reason not to.
Right.
You know, I had full justification. But I asked myself this question: and at the time, you know, my kids, I have 2 boys. Back then, now I have 4 kids total. But they were 9 and 10, and I asked myself, if he died, would I regret not trying to repair it? And the answer was yes, I would. And
Good
so
question.
on day 2 of that event, I reached out to him and I said, hey, we haven't talked in 13 years. I'd love for you to meet your grandsons. I'd like to have some kind of relationship with you. And so I go up to Indiana, and he meets his grandsons for the first time, and we never do grow into this amazing go play ball,
Right.
father son,
Yeah.
scenario, but something in me changed, and I came home. And it was 1 week later that I found that company that I became the #1 earner of.
Wow.
And I know for a fact that when I release resentment, anger, whatever that was, it gave me different options. All of a sudden, I saw the world a little differently. And it's not like he gave me any kind of money advice or anything
Right.
like that. But that was one of those moments that really stands out of changing my life. Now,
How did he receive the act of forgiveness, or was it more about the act of forgiveness and it was releasing something out of you?
it's an interesting question. We never did grow, super close or anything. I don't know, man. It's still kind of a mystery. I feel like it was more for me to get rid of some stuff. But what my favorite part of that story is about a year later, I had been asked to speak in Myrtle Beach, and this guy Kenneth had asked me to speak. And this is the first time, at least I can recall, that looking back, God nudged me. Okay. So I'm at this event and I just finished an opportunity meeting. I'm about to go to do a training, and I get this just nudge: talk about your dad.
Wow.
And I'd never talked about my dad. And so the question I sometimes wonder is, why did I listen? Because I wasn't Christian. I didn't
Right.
grow up in the church. Like why did I listen to that? Was that me thinking it was my own wisdom? Like, where'd it come from?
Right.
And so that day, I told that story that I just shared with you. And basically the point I was trying to make is, hey, when you forgive, things get released from you.
Yes.
and new things open up.
Yes.
Well, I finish, and Kenneth, the guy that booked me, comes walking down the aisle. He's shaking. Tears
Wow.
are rolling down his face. I'm like, wow, man, that hit you hard. And he said, I can't believe you just shared that. I haven't seen, this is what he says, he hadn't seen his dad in 17 years.
Wow.
And the next day, he was flying out for his funeral.
Good for him. Oh.
He's like, I haven't talked to my dad in 17 years. Tomorrow I fly out for his
Oh
funeral.
my God.
And I'm like, whoa. And so at first, my normal reaction back then was to beat myself up. Like, I was on a webinar with him a week ago. What if I shared it?
Should have said it sooner.
And then I realized that I was meant to experience that, because up till that point, I had never been vulnerable with anyone. Like, literally anyone.
Wow.
I was always the showboat. I was
Right.
always, look at what I've done, and
Yeah.
I didn't share about foreclosure. I didn't share about abuse. I only talked about my successes, and
Yeah.
and so he changed me. Now, since 2010, maybe 11, I've shared that thousands of times. I have hundreds of letters, hundreds of messages of people that heard the message, repaired the relationship with their mom, dad, sister, brother, son, daughter, and 3 in particular that they heard my message. They reached out to their fathers. They were all fathers. And shortly thereafter, their fathers died.
Wow.
So they
A
literally
short
had to
window of
hear my
time.
you
Yeah.
know, in that window of time. And it's just, you know, I know why God nudged me to, you know, to do that, because that was a very transforming part of my life.
I mean, that's it's amazing that you listen
Yeah.
you listen to it then,
Yeah.
or that you continue to listen to it. Because I think a lot of times people don't realize some of the most dangerous place you can be is inside the four walls of your home.
Yeah.
And good for you for having the courage to share a vulnerable story or
Yeah.
share a story, because you know that compassion, that wherever that comes from for you. I mean, that's a compassion for human beings of.
Yeah.
People learn through stories, and people have similar experiences, and one person's willingness to share something makes it okay for someone else
That's right.
to live with their lack of self-worth or whatever it is. And
That's right.
there's a lot of things you can do from that. Going into network marketing, you said from that landmark forum, the act of forgiveness, a year later,
Yep.
you become the number one earner in a network marketing company. I assume you didn't have network marketing experience before them. You were doing other things, or may have been introduced to it or whatever.
I had, yeah.
But this
I
was
dabbled.
But this
Yeah.
was a time that you did something. What was that year like for you, going from nothing to, or just starting to becoming number one in a company? What were you honoring about yourself? What did you learn about network marketing that maybe you didn't understand before, that you think other people, if they knew it,
Yeah.
could be better at it?
I mean, you know what? My head was just, I was just hungry, man. I was just so hungry. And I had been so distraught and depressed and small, you know, for like a year. And I was just so hungry, man. I was so on fire. I created a psychological trigger that anytime I thought about how bad my life had been, I had to pick up the phone. I had to prospect somebody. And so, like, I didn't know when I won the first trip. I didn't know when I hit the top rank. I didn't know. I was just like, oh yeah, okay, great. You know, and I was just like so
Machine mode, huh?
focused of just every minute I have to pour into. So I know what hard work looks like. And, you know, like I'd read a book called Go for No, and, you know, I had to get 20 no's a day, every day, before my head hit the pillow. Like I could not go to sleep unless I'd had 20 no's. And that may mean 50 reach outs. That may mean 100 reach outs. And I was just hungry, man. And it was a beautiful time. You know, it's interesting because one day I'm in foreclosure. I'm $1 million in debt. I'm dodging bill collectors. Depressed. I had been divorced, engaged, disengaged. And then literally the next day, none of that mattered. None of it mattered. None of it had changed, but none of it mattered.
Interesting.
And what I find is most people, they think that, well, if only my circumstance would change. No, it's you. You have to change. Right. So your personality creates your personal reality. And it's, you know, how you think, act, and feel. Well, my personal reality had not changed, but my personality did, which then changed my personal reality. And, you know, people need to learn that you can be in the mud, you can be in the toughness, and you can change your attitude about it. You can change your focus. I mean, I stopped opening my mail because I'm like, you know, I can't pay it anyway. You know,
What's the point?
What's the point, right? I stopped being depressed. I stopped being sad, and I just rolled it into work, and eventually worked all that stuff out. You know, I paid off, you know, different things. Sometimes years later, you know, I paid off bills. And I figured, you know what, I'm gonna figure it out later.
Well, did you have a mentor around you at that time, or was it something you were reading, or just an internal fortitude that I'm in this spot, so what do I have to lose? Being hungry can mean different things to different people, and I know you're wired a certain way, but what or who around you? Because at this point, if nothing is working for you, obviously the people that are around you probably by this point maybe know nothing's working for you. And so sometimes when people in network marketing, they're like, I got to go to, you know, my friends and family, but my friends and family know that I'm going through the worst moment in my time, but you still did it.
Yeah.
Was anyone helping you, or what really switched inside of you? Is the same thing as when you're 18, you heard the guy talking at Winn-Dixie, or just the switch goes off?
You know, no one knew. I kept up the facade.
Oh, okay.
You know, I I was the number one earner still in the house that's in foreclosure. And, so I'm just waiting, like, when do I got to leave this place? And I'd already reached number one earner status and it didn't make sense mathematically to catch it up. So I'm just like, whatever. And so people didn't know. And I think one of the first people to find out, and not by my design, was my mom. And she was over at the house and she's like, hey, there's a guy here and he's serving papers. I'm like, oh, man. And like, I mean, I just felt like I'd let her down so much, and she's been through a lot. And so I didn't tell anybody. Everyone thought everything was, I mean, at least on the surface. Now, maybe they talked, when I'm not around and figured things out. I don't know. But at least on the surface, everyone thought Ray was doing pretty good.
Right. And you go from being top in a company. When did you make the transition out of a company to teaching people in the industry at large? When did that shift happen? And is it the calling that you knew that I wanted to teach people how to do something, or what made you do that?
Yeah. So, it was like pretty early on, because I was one of the first people to do social media and network marketing.
Okay.
And so like I got all kinds of hate. I mean, people are like, that doesn't work. I remember a guy came up to me at a convention and he says, hey, I hear you recruit a lot of people on Facebook. And this was 2009, right? Yeah. And he says, hey, I hear you recruit a lot of people on Facebook. I said, yeah, I thought he was complimenting me. And he goes, well, I prefer duplication. And he turns around and walks away. I'm like, all right. Yeah. See, he doesn't understand how I'm wired, man. Like that's the Hatorade's my Gatorade. That's right. So like I just eat
I'm going to double
up. And I remember 7 months later, I was the number one earner, and I found him in the crowd. I was a little, I was that guy.
Hold the trophy up, like, shines in his eye.
Yeah. And so because it was a really interesting scenario, I don't know, I'm not sure, but I don't know that the scenario has really existed much since, is I was the number one earner, but I was being hired by a lot of companies to speak on their stage because they were so hungry. Some of them were so hungry about learning social media. And they're like, hey, how are you doing this? Like, hey, teach us Facebook, teach us recruiting on social media. And, you had some of the more, traditional companies that I'd be the last person they would hire until COVID happened. But I just had all these companies are hiring me, and all these companies are like, hey, why don't you create a course for us and we'll sell it and we'll give you a cut. And so I was doing these different, deals and stuff, not with other network marketing companies, but with training companies and things like that. And in 2013, the company that I was the number one earner of, there was some health issues with one of the owner's wives. And they kind of decided, you know what, we need to like slow it down, and we'd like to sell the business to this other company. So in 2013, they merged into another company, and I run with them for a few years, but I feel like I'm not doing anything 100%. Like I have training, speaking, and stuff over here. I got my network marketing team over here, and I don't feel like I'm doing either of them that great. Right. And so in 2016, I'm like, you know what, I feel like I can make a bigger difference here. I feel like my team's in good hands over here. So I sold my organization, still friends with all those guys, and focus. So it was 2016 that I decided to focus on coaching and training.
And in that process, obviously, coach, trained thousands of people, very beginning people, high income, top of the class people. What do you see as like a difference between someone that doesn't really have much success and someone that does have success? What is a couple things that are the difference between those two?
I mean, one, consistency is the biggest. I would say and I've realized, like, one of the core things in teaching that I've learned is I used to be very one-dimensional and say, here's what to do this, 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 this. Right. And what I've learned is it's, for most people, it's more important to tell them why they won't do it. Oh. Here's why you won't do it.
You're right.
And so if you're an entrepreneur and you struggle with consistency, guarantee you what the reason is. Now, the actual reason varies, but the underlying reason is always the same. If you struggle with consistency, it's because you made the wrong conclusions based on observations to success as a kid. So you made observations as a kid and you drew the wrong conclusions.
Interesting.
So let me give you some examples. So I've seen this a lot. If you had parents that made a bunch of money and lost it, you may have concluded very likely that you said, well, if you make a bunch of money, you're just going to lose it.
Right.
So at some point you'll stop being consistent, right? It's kind of like the guy that, your dad fell off a mountain and killed himself, so you just won't climb mountains.
Right. That's right.
Now the one person will climb every mountain, and then
Right.
some will just avoid mountains, right? If you had successful parents but they ignored you, you will sabotage success because you don't want your kids to feel the way you did. People that struggle with recognition, they had siblings, and they were usually the good one. So the good sibling always heard, why can't you be more like your sister? And they created this association in their brain as a kid that when I get edified, someone else gets harmed, and I don't like that.
Interesting.
And so they'll literally sabotage being up on stage. They'll sabotage recognition. They'll fly under the radar, under their potential. And so 100% of the time, anyone I've ever coached that struggles with consistency, with a few questions, I can kind of figure out, that's your problem. And probably one of my wildest examples, I was actually on Clubhouse. And I'm just like, I used to do this and I'd be like, open coaching, just hop on in.
Yeah.
And so this girl hops in and, I can't see her. It's Clubhouse, right? And she says, she tells me her story. She would go into a company, crush it, break records, amazing, whatever. Then she would figure out these guys aren't ethical or whatever, and she'd get out of there, start another, adventure and crush it there, figure out something's wrong, crush it there, crush it there. So I know with a pattern like that,
Right.
guaranteed something from her childhood, guaranteed. And so, I just asked, well, what was your relationship like with your parents? And she's like, oh my God, they're amazing. They're still together today and they're just perfect. Never hit me, never abused me, never nothing. I know there's something missing there. And our brain will have us not remember the things that harmed us. Because what happens is we made an observation, a conclusion was made, a stronghold was built, and then your body will spend time defending it
Right.
so that you don't figure it out because it's trying to keep you safe.
Right.
It's not trying to keep you small. It's trying to keep you safe.
Protect you. Yeah.
And if you think that there's danger in success, then it will,
Right.
you won't know why, but you just won't be consistent, right? And this is also true in, unfortunately, women who were sexually abused young. A lot of times they'll sabotage their body, so they just can't lose weight.
Right.
They won't be able to,
Right.
because there's a part of them that said, when I was cute and skinny,
Yeah.
I got
something
abused,
happened.
right? So with her, I can just tell she's a little bit of a rebellious kind of soul. And so I said, it's kind of a trick, but I said, well, it's okay if you don't remember. And so she goes,
How dare you?
and this is, Clubhouse. I don't know if she just in an accident. Like, I don't hear it. Hello. Are you there? Are you okay? And she said, I just remember catching my mom cheating on my dad.
Wow.
And I'm like, got it. That makes a lot of sense. She goes, what do you mean? I'm like, well, as soon as you feel really good about something, the shoe's about to drop. So you vowed as a little girl, never again will I be surprised. So you vow that you would be in control the rest of your life, and that's exactly what you're doing.
Wow.
But you're not in control. Your program's in control. So every time something started going good and they started clapping for her and saying, you're awesome,
Right.
that's when she knew something wrong was about to happen. So she would get out of there. She would find something wrong. She would justify it logically. And since then, to my knowledge, she's been in the same company, rocking and rolling ever since.
Wow.
Because once you become aware of that, which I think is part of our job, there's a lot of things that I now see as God's job, but there are things that are our job.
Correct.
And that an awareness is one of them for you, because the lesson is repeated until it's learned.
Correct.
And he loves you so much that he is not going to allow you to stay the same. So he's going to keep hammering that lesson until you get it.
Yes.
And so we got to be aware and say, oh, that's the lesson. Oh my goodness. And then we can grow to that next level.
Awareness unlocks the door to access.
Yeah.
100%.
Amen.
It's amazing. You said up to just recently, you've grown into a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
So much so you even did an event recently called Faith Over Fear. Tell me about that moment in time. When did it happen? How long ago was it?
Yeah. So it was a year ago last month. Didn't grow up in the church. Didn't know one verse. I mean, I'd seen Tim Tebow with the John 3:16. Didn't know what it meant.
Right.
And even when I looked it up, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Like, what is this? What does that mean? And so 2019, I had a lot of goals. You know, I'd spoken on, you know, pretty much every major stage. You know, Grant Cardone's, Russell Brunson's, Eric's. You know, like, you know, a lot of great stages. Share the stage with amazing people. Inc. 5000 Company, best-selling book, etc. But something was missing, and so I went on a very different journey. And so I tried, because I still had flaws, like major ones. Like, I was the guy always. My wife is a social butterfly. Like, if there was a cocktail party every night, it would be heaven.
Right.
And I was always like, do we have to go to that? Hey, can we leave? I was always the one wanting to leave early or
Right.
not go at all. I had massive social anxiety. Now, if you're asking me about business, no problem. You want me to speak on a stage, 27,000 people? No problem. But you want to just chit
Small
chat?
talk, yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
I don't feel good.
I feel you.
And I didn't know what causes that, right? So I had trust issues, betrayal issues, I had social anxiety. And so I just started a very different race. I went from, okay, let me learn marketing strategies and tactics and branding and all this stuff, to what the heck's wrong with me?
Wow.
And so I do hypnosis, I do all kinds of different therapy. I do 2 years of 1 to 3 hours a day of meditation.
Wow.
And, you know, like, I tamed the body, man. Like, I went from not being able to sit still for 5 minutes to 4-hour meditations.
Wow. It's amazing.
And so, like, it was,
Wow.
that's just the way he wired me.
Wow.
It was all in, man. And so I won't say those things didn't help. A lot of them did. Like, I mean, I calmed my mind, I tamed the body. I'm more powerful than I thought, you know? And, but there was still something missing. And so a year ago, my wife, she had just spoken in Nashville, and she came home and she said, hey, you need to talk to this guy. I met this guy. You need to talk to this guy. I'm like, okay. And so I get on, and he lives in Miami. We get on a Zoom call, and like, first words out of his mouth is, I see a big vision for you and God. And I'm like,
Yeah.
like, what are you selling me, preacher
Right.
Man?
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm like, what?
Where's the oil?
And so we talk for like an hour, maybe 90 minutes, and nothing he says makes any sense at all.
Interesting.
But it feels true. And I'm bothered by this. I'm like, this is strange. And so I don't know what to do with it. So I'm like, I don't know. The next night, my wife and I, we go to a networking event in Naples, and I walk up the stairs, and I see a guy that I'd met before, but I didn't remember what he did. I didn't remember his name. And he sees me, and he looks at me, and he locks eyes with me, and goes, I see a big vision for you and God.
Get out of here.
And I'm like, okay, they don't know each other. They're in
Right.
different cities. Like, this is officially weird.
Yeah.
And he's a pastor. He's a former corrections officer, 6'4". He grabs me. He starts praying over me. And this is in the middle of this networking
Wow.
function. I know all kinds of people there.
How are you feeling internally?
So
You're already having social
I
anxiety.
mean, people are walking this way, this way, this way. I mean, we're literally in the middle of this big room, hundreds of people, and I'm crying. He says, you're going to face a fork in the road, and you got to choose God. And,
Wow.
and I don't know what is happening, but I'm crying, I'm weeping. And I come out of it, and I expect, like, the crowd to be like, what is wrong, man? Cut this
Right.
guy off,
Right.
man. He's been drinking too much. I come out of it. No one noticed anything.
Wow.
Now, that's literally impossible, right? God put a shield over us. We were in the middle. He's 6'4". We're standing up. He's praying over me. It's a very weird scene. There's people everywhere. Not one person said, you okay, bro? Like, no one said anything.
Interesting.
And so I really don't know what to do at this point, right? And so I go home, and I'm just like, man, what am I supposed to do with this? And finally, about 2 weeks later, I kind of drag my feet on it. I have that original guy come over with a guy from church, and my wife and I, we give our life to Christ.
Wow.
We still don't know anything. I mean, we don't know literally anything. And so nothing incredible happened. I didn't float in the air or anything like that. But the next morning I wake up, and if you do 2 hours of meditation, a day for 2 years, you really get to know your body. And the next morning I wake up and my feet hit the floor. I'm looking at my hands, and I'm looking at the sunrise. I'm looking at the flowers outside. It's not the same body.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the same. Like my eyes are like in 4D. Like
Right.
I'm like, I'm different. Like there's something different. And I just had the overwhelming feeling of that I just needed to pray. And I don't know what to do.
Right.
And so I just get down and I said, God, I don't know what I'm doing, but hey, if you want me to shut the business down, I will. If you want me on the road with a robe, I will.
Wow.
You tell me. And I get go live. I'm like, oh. Now, I had spoken on stage for, even before network marketing, I'd spoken on stage, for 16 years or something 16 years. And I had never said the word God, ever.
Wow.
I'm not on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, okay. And so I go live. It's an emotional, blubbering mess where I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I'm going to be obedient. And that video gets 50,000 views the first day.
Wow.
I get over 1,000 messages. But what was the wildest part of that is I get over 200 messages from people that say, I've been woken up in the middle of the night to pray for you.
Interesting.
And none of them had ever told me. Like literally none of them had ever said, hey man, I'm praying for, like none of them had ever told me. And so that started the journey. And just the way he wired me, I'm just all in. And so I get multiple Bible mentors. I'm in the Word every day. I now do 6 days a week walk in faith videos. And I'm just in love with it. And at first I thought maybe he wants me in ministry. But he's told me through now 4 different things that I'm to be in the marketplace and to, help entrepreneurs and business owners with faith, because they're seeking things that they will not fulfill through achievement and money.
Right.
It's okay to have it.
Right.
It's okay to have money. Just don't have money have you.
Right.
It's okay to have success. Don't have success have you. And, a lot of people, they'll take something that's good and they'll make it the supreme good. It becomes their North Star. It becomes their idol.
Their God. Yeah.
Their God.
Yes.
And so it's, to help people. And again, we're all the way back to help the person I used to be. It's just now I can help a lot of people that have been searching, but they're not sure for what. And so in the absence of knowing what, they've been seeking success, money, achievement, etc., but that hasn't been fulfilling them.
Right.
And so you can have all those things, but you make God your priority and you make God first, all of a sudden everything becomes more meaningful and purposeful.
That's an amazing testimony. I love that. I love, again, I mean, one your willingness to share, much like, the scenario with your dad, and your willingness to share that experience with people. You're doing it again. I believe God has a big vision for you, but he's a big calling on your life. And I think that the marketplace is an interesting place to be. And I love that. What I love about the story, the more the testimony, is 200 people reaching out to you, saying that I was praying for you, because there's something about obedience. There's one thing about awareness. There's another thing about access. There's something totally different about being obedient and being able to lay everything down at the feet of Jesus and being obedient to that. Because I think that sometimes people think that it's not okay. I can't say that in business, or maybe the marketplace isn't a place for me to use the word God or Jesus or whatever. And what have you learned from being an entrepreneur, successful in network marketing, successful in coaching other people, successful in all different kinds of businesses, all different kinds of industries? You're involved in a lot of other things. But what is it that you're learning to be okay with, of having the courage of laying everything down at the feet of Jesus, but 2, also sharing that or educating other people, giving them a level of awareness that maybe they have, or maybe they're afraid of, or where do you see the fear for some entrepreneurs or people in business to be like a closet Christian
Sure.
in business and being okay with that?
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge topic. And there's a lot of people that like, oh, my faith is separate from my business. And that's not how God wants it.
Right.
God doesn't want that, and let me, clarify that. So, like you have, our keynote speaker of our Faith Over Fear event, which we had ran an annual event for 10 years, changed the name of it, rebranded it to Faith Over Fear. And we had John Maxwell as the keynote speaker.
Awesome.
And so John, if you know him, he was a pastor for 25 years, Christian. But if you don't really know him, I mean, he leads secular, right?
Mm-hmm.
He teaches leadership. You can learn so much from him, whether you're of the faith, or not. And so I'm not suggesting that everyone is supposed to lead with faith, but if you are of faith and you have no plan for anyone, for your business to ever lead anyone to Christ, then I don't think that's the way.
Right.
And so I found that there's a couple things. Number one, some people have legitimately been church hurt, and they were judged or shamed by someone in the church. They were made to feel bad or less than, which is not biblical.
Right.
Ephesians 4:29 says, "Do not let unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what will lift others up." Right. And First Peter 3:15 says, "When someone wonders the source of your hope, respond with gentleness and respect." Right. So we are to be kind. Right. We're not to wag our fingers or shame or judge others or anything like that. But people experience that. They don't feel good. So they then associate that, well, if I mention it all, then I'm going to make other people feel like I did, and I don't want that. And that doesn't have to be the case.
Right.
You can do it in a kind way. You can do it in a loving way. And number two is just having, pray on it, right? Because you need to believe that Holy Spirit works and moves and is real. And so this now happens, I don't want to say every day, but almost, where I get nudged to pray for someone, stranger. And so I'll just walk up to him and I'm like, hey, and I did it 3 times today already. But like the lady sitting next to me, I get nudged, pray with her. I'm like, hey, hey, is there anything I can pray for you about? All right. And usually it's awesome when I ask people that, because a lot of times you'll get a surprising response. Yes. Most of the time it's absolutely. It's like they were waiting for me to ask. It's like, how'd you even know?
I knew you'd be sitting next to me.
Yeah. And so you do need to have some trust and faith in God. Is that if you're being nudged to talk about it, be obedient. And the more I've just learned this, the more obedient I am, the more instructions I get. Last week I prayed for Father, what is your will for me in the business marketplace? And am I on the right track? Am I where you want me? Because I knew he wanted me in the marketplace, not in ministry, because there's been a few signs to that. And he gave me a new tagline. He gave me a tagline I would not have come up with on my own. And after I heard it, I thought about it. I'm like, that's kind of interesting. But the more that I operate under that mantle, I'm like, man, this is perfect. This is so much better than I would have come up with. And so, trust that, right? So you may have been church hurt. Well, so was Jesus. Yeah. A lot of people they were hurt by their biological father, and they project that onto their heavenly Father. And that was me.
Right.
So I thought God was mean, uncaring. I wasn't important. He'd never be proud of me. I wasn't enough. And I realized that, wait a minute, that's how I feel about my real dad, right? My biological dad. And they're not the same.
Right.
He loves you perfectly.
Right.
He loves you so much that he won't allow you to stay the same. And he's the giver of perfect gifts, right? And so not everyone's called to lead with faith. But if you're just running your business over here and your faith is over here and you have no plan to connect the two, that's a big mistake.
That's right.
You look at someone like John Maxwell, as of, I believe it was August, he's brought over 1 million entrepreneurs to Christ.
Wow.
1 million.
Wow.
But see, he's not leading with Jesus.
Right.
He's leading with, let me earn the right to tell you about my faith.
Right.
And so some people are called that way. I'm called to be more faith forward, but still in the marketplace.
Right.
And some people, it may be totally different.
Right.
But if you don't have a plan, then I would question are you really trying to draw closer to God?
Right.
And I would question that.
Over the past year, what have you grown to love most about your Heavenly Father?
Just how he works, man. Just how he works. So, I'll give you two scenarios. So I was leaving a John Maxwell conference in Orlando, and I was, driving down the interstate, and I just kind of out of nowhere get hungry. I'm like, all right, I'll stop and get food, right? And I'm by myself, and so I pull off on this exit, and I'm at this traffic light, and I see Chick-fil-A, and I see this seafood restaurant, and it's lunchtime. I'm by myself. I'll probably just do drive-through,
Right.
get home quick. But I feel I didn't at that point. I don't know. I guess I just become very trusting. I feel nudged to go to the seafood restaurant, so I go there. And I remember, I sit down. I'm like, why am I this sit down restaurant by myself? Like, this is strange. And I'm looking at the menu, and I'm like, I don't even want anything on here, whatever. And so I order something, and then sometimes I forget, but I'm usually pretty good at asking the waiter or waitress, hey, can I pray for you? Right? I usually pray. Is there anything I can pray for you about? And so I ask her, I said, hey, I usually pray. Is there anything I can pray for you about? And she goes, pray for me? And she looks up and she starts doing this real quick. And she just instant starts tearing up. I'm like, whoa. And she goes, man, I can't believe you just asked me that. My son died 60 days ago.
Holy cow.
And I'm like, whoa, and so I get up and I hug her, and of all the waitresses, I get her. And by the way, her name's Jessica, my wife's name. And so, I pray with her and everything. And then I just realize God made me hungry to pull off on that exit, to go to that restaurant, to get that waitress,
Pray for her son.
to pray for her. And so I, leave her, a really nice tip, and I leave her a note, and I said, hey, God loves you. Your son's in a better place, and I know this won't bring back your son, but I hope it helps. Right? And I get out of there because I don't like people seeing it when you do something like that. It's weird. And I pull around the corner, and I just bawl. I'm just like, God, you're so good, man. You're so good. You allowed me to experience that, because that was for me. Like, that it felt amazing for me to go and tell her. The second time was I have a lot of these stories, but I'll share two. So I was nudged to go on this Holy Land tour in Israel. And this was a month and a half ago. So you might know where I'm going here. And so halfway throughout the trip, war breaks out. So we're literally there, day 5 of the 10-day trip. The music festival gets raided. Hamas is killing people, door to door and everything. And even that night, we were staying on the Sea of Galilee, and we're looking, and we saw like these lights in the sky and stuff, and we saw paragliders, and we're like, that's weird. Strange. That's weird. And then the next day, we're with our group, and I start seeing everyone looking at their phones, and I'm like, what's going on here? And and that's when the trip made a very different turn. And so we head to Jerusalem. We get there. We had to go into the bomb shelter 3 times.
Holy cow!
Like, there's there's serious stuff going on. And my wife is just losing it, man. Like, I've never seen her like that before. She's in fight or flight for 4 days straight. Like, doesn't do her makeup, doesn't do her hair. She's just like rough shape. And so, I prayed, and I'm like, God, are you going to be okay? And I felt his presence so strong. I'm trembling, I'm shaking, I'm weeping. And she's like, are you okay? And it was just such an honoring of, I'm just this, single, I'm just this dude on the planet, and that you would visit me to such a high degree. And he told me, you're going to be fine. Stick with the group. You're going to get out. It's going to be fine.
Amazing.
And so I'm trying to convey that to her. She's in fight or flight. She didn't listen to any of this. And, so it was very stressful. So the whole time I'm praying for her faith. Right. And, it was just so just so intense, man. So the war didn't bother me at all.
Interesting.
Because, God had told me we're going to be okay, so we're going to be okay.
Right.
And, but like the war between me and her, of me trying to manage, like she's not listening to me. I'm so positive that I'm hearing from God and I'm telling her. And so, I snap at her once at the hotel. I was trying to be the rock, and I just like, and then we get to the airport. So she books 4 different flights. They all get canceled. I told her, I'm like, we're not supposed to do this. And she'd book it, it'd get canceled, get canceled, get canceled, get canceled. And so the day we make it to the airport, they had launched 4,000 rockets at the airport.
Dang.
And, the Iron Dome is pretty efficient.
It's still, man, it's a lot of rockets.
Yeah, it taking them all out. But it's 6 hours. Like, it's Exodus, man. Like, I mean, the person in front of us had 24 suitcases.
Dang.
Like
They're just
getting the heck out. And it was 6 hours just to drop your bags off. Now, that's not security.
Oof.
Just drop your bags off. So people were abandoning their bags because they were so worried about missing their flights. Yeah. And so we're like, just think about this, right? It's war, rockets, abandoned suitcases everywhere, and you're like,
what's going on?
And our guide told us, he goes, hey, if you report that bag, they'll shut down the airport. You won't get out. We're like, okay, we're going to roll the dice. And so we make it through there. We get to the terminal. Our flight was delayed 3 hours. So it's 3 a.m. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we're all there. And we're the group of 53 that was talked about on Fox News and MSNBC, and I mean there was a lot of publicity about it, and so we get to the airport. It's 3 a.m. We're all just like, just beat, and all of a sudden, pop, 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 and we're all like, oh. Some parent had given their kids these balloons,
and
these kids are popping these balloons.
The plane was under attack,
right? I mean, we just wanted to kill these little kids, but we get on the plane. And I, we're safe. We're good to go. And we're on El Al, which every pilot is a fighter pilot. Yeah. They have missiles on the planes.
Do they really?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And they come prepared. And they, Israelis pride themselves on, you're not going to stop us, right?
We're getting out.
Might be good, might be bad.
Right.
I don't know. And so we're on the plane, we're taking off, and I posted on social media, we're out of here, yeah. And my wife blows up at me. She goes, "Why'd you post that?" Like there's a Hamas just out there with a rocket launcher.
Watching Ray Higdon.
There's Ray and Jess. Boom.
Got him in our sights.
And she goes, "Why did you do that? You need to delete that right away." And I just snapped. And so we had we were in first class. She's sitting in front of me. I'm behind her. And so she turns around, we're texting each other. And so we're texting each other. And I mean, I have the thought, are we even going to stay together? Like, seriously, it's been 4 or 5 days of just rough, just rough fight. I mean, just rough, man. And so, as soon as I think, are we even going to stay together? God shows me. He shows me the 2 places where I snapped and what they meant to me and what was in my heart that I needed to work on.
Interesting.
And that was my need to feel heard because I wasn't being heard, and then my need for control. When she told me to take that down, that I need to be in control, just snapped. And this whole time I'd been praying for her faith. Her faith needs to be better, but he had been working on me the whole time. And so I apologized to her. Our relationship is better than it's ever been. And I wouldn't trade that trip. He revealed to me things that he could only in the way he could do, like I didn't see it coming. And he just said, look what I've been showing you. And I'm like, dang, and I'm like, dang, man. And I just cried, and I know she was crying. Yeah. And so it's just incredible.
That's I admire your again willingness to share the story, but also your your ability to self-reflect and really take to heart what God is showing you, not what you think you're seeing, but what God is revealing. 2 totally different things, and I think it's phenomenal the walk that you're on.
thanks.
Phenomenal for your obedience. Phenomenal for everything that you're doing. Your willingness to share. I have zero doubt you're going to impact millions and millions of people. And I think that, when you look at the thing that you said about John Maxwell is we brought over 1,000 entrepreneurs to
A
million entrepreneurs. It reminded me of when you said that, Rick. I was listening to this was many, many years ago. I was listening to Rick Warren, and he asked a question. I remember I was painting my son's bedroom, but I was listening to Rick Warren as I'm painting my son's bedroom. But Rick Warren asked a question. I don't remember where it was, but he said, "How many people are going to go to heaven because of you?" Like, it stopped me like dead in my tracks. Like, what is my real intent for education? What is my real intent for empowering?
Yeah.
Am I really leading people to what is the absolute most important thing?
Yeah.
That what you do echoes against the backdrop of all of eternity. And so it's an honor and a privilege to have you here today. You've got an amazing first part of your story. I think the second half of your life is going to be epic. I really do. I think
I'm
it's going to
excited.
be. I think that's how you should be. Continue doing what you're doing. Where's the best place for people to find you or get more from you?
Yeah. So, I do 6 days a week of walk in faith videos where I take scripture and apply it to leadership or mindset. Those are kind of my two go-tos. So, my YouTube channel is higdengroup.com/channel. And, I'm on all the major, social medias.
Awesome.
So, Ray Higdon.
Very good. Before you go, you do us the honor of placing a sticker.
Nice.
Your name. So it's your choice of your autograph or anything else you want to put on that message, because and pick your spot. Pick any spot on the table.
Oh, boy. Man, the choices here. Okay.
Perfect. Make
we
God
go.
first.
Make God
Choose where you
first.
want to go.
Oh, okay.
Find your spot. You can put it anywhere.
These seem laminated. They are on there.
They are on there.
I thought
yep.
you like.
No, maybe once we get to a spot when we'll
You
put
know
some laminate.
I'm going to remind your next speakers
That's awesome.
to be right here.
That's awesome. Make God first. Ray Higdon, thank you for being here. Always ride the wave of life and always play big.